Welcome back to Trending Topic. I am your host, Vernon Keith, and today's hot topic is: do Americans hate Chinese? With all the trade war stuff going on, I sat here and thought about that topic, and I thought, do we hate the Chinese? Do people think that we hate the Chinese? What is the true answer behind that? And I had to go all the way back to when I was a kid, and let me share my perspective of what it was like from when I first learned about the Chinese population. I'm going to take us back to about 1976, 1977. And I remember sitting at my desk. I was probably grade 2, grade 3 at the most. And we hear this, and all of a sudden the teacher got up and said, "All right, everybody, single file, let's go down into the basement." And it's like, into the basement? Why are we going into the basement? And what we were told is that we were practicing a drill in case the Chinese or the Russians decided to bomb us. So we went down single file, down these little pathways in areas of the basement I've never seen since, until they demolished the school. Then I came to some of those areas again, and everything was dimly lit, and you'd see these fallout shelter signs that were orange with kind of a circular pattern. And so we walked down into this dimly lit area, and it had a very low ceiling, and it went pretty far back, and all of us kids were in this room. And it was so surreal. And I just thought about that. I thought, wow, why would they bomb us? Who are the Chinese? I don't know anything about the Chinese. It was so crazy. And yet, there it was. We're sitting there in this bomb shelter in the basement of our school. And we had to do this at least once a year, at least in that school. We did that. I can't recall doing it in grades 4 through 6, but we did it in grades 1 to 3 in our elementary school. And this was in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And so it was a very conservative area. And we didn't know any Chinese in my community. I don't even know if there was one Chinese person. There may have been, but not in my classroom. We didn't have any Chinese students. We had one Asian guy in grades 1 to 3, and he was from, I believe, South Korea. That was it. That was the extent of my Asian connection growing up in that area. Now, there were other areas that had more of an Asian population within that city, but at that time, not so much. So it was quite unique for us growing up without knowing any Chinese. And all of a sudden, we're being told that we had to prepare just in case. Just in case. So in America, the largest Chinese populations are in Texas, California, New York, Boston, Hawaii, and Seattle. But it only totals about 4.2 million people. So that's 1.6% of the entire population. That's it. Now, when I turned about 24, I moved from Minnesota all the way to the West Coast, and I lived in Portland, Oregon. Now, in Portland, Oregon, they did have a Chinatown, but oddly enough, the area that I was outside the city, we didn't know any Chinese people. We really didn't. There were more Russian people than there were Chinese people. And I think I ran into one person in a line at a pancake festival, and I said, "Where are you from?" And they said, "Oh, I'm from China." I said, "Oh, welcome. Nice to meet you." And that was it. That was the extent of people that I met. And what most people don't realize is there are parts of the U.S. that many people grow up and they might never even meet a Chinese person. And that's something to consider. I was into metal detecting, and I would look for old coins. And you'd wave your little machine back and it'd go beep, 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 and then you dig for the coin. And one of the things that I had learned was that there was a big Chinese group that had helped to establish the railroad system in America. So there were a lot of Chinese laborers that set up Chinese labor camps that traveled throughout the U.S. setting up the railroads. And then also during the gold rush, there were many Chinese laborers that came by and tried to work the old tailing piles, trying to find gold that was missed from the early miners. So there were Chinese that would travel through, but I think most of those would end up in the bigger cities, mostly in California. Now, this is kind of funny, and most of my Asian friends laugh when I tell them this because it sounds so unusual. When I was growing up in my community, there was just maybe one, two, or three Chinese restaurants, and they were Chinese restaurants, but they were also hybrid Chinese restaurants. So what do I mean by that? When you go to these Chinese restaurants, you could buy Chinese and American food. So if your family or friends thought Chinese food was way too exotic for them, they could order a hamburger, they could order French fries or a chicken basket or something. And that is kind of the running joke because it was just too exotic for some people and they didn't want to even try Chinese food, which is funny because I live in Asia now and yeah, we're always eating different foods from different places. So as a result, there were not many Asian stores, there were not many Asian communities. There probably are a lot more now than what there used to be, but at that time there just wasn't. Now, when I entered grade 4 through 6, we ended up taking in refugees from Laos and I think perhaps Cambodia. I'm not exactly sure, but I remember we were with these kids on the playground and not many white kids would go over and talk to them. The Asian kids kind of stayed to themselves and the white kids kind of stayed to themselves. And you know, occasionally I'd go over there and I'd play marbles with the kids, but their language was just hard enough to speak, and they didn't really speak much English, so it kind of put them a little bit on the outside and at a disadvantage for connection and really assimilating. I think it took them quite a few more years to actually feel connected to the community, and it did happen because the Laotians, they were hardworking people. They worked really hard and they really tried to become part of a community, which was really smart of them. And the kids that I knew, they never caused any problems. They were good people. So yeah, something to consider. That was my experience. That's what I thought of that group. But when it comes to the Chinese, we just didn't have any experience with the Chinese. And it changed for me when I left and moved to the Philippines in 2016, and I was in my middle 40s. And at that time, I took a year off. I did some traveling, and I thought, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Am I going to open a business? Because at that time, before I moved, I had restored classic vintage cars. I worked for myself for 20 years, 5 years for other people. And I thought, what am I going to do? And it dawned on me after friends had kind of prodded me, well, you could teach English. And I thought, I don't know, maybe I could. And so when it came time to it, I thought, okay, let's try it. And they said, okay, well, you're going to teach English to the Chinese. And I thought, to the Chinese, really? Are they going to not like me? What's that going to be like, teaching English to the Chinese? I didn't know any Chinese. I didn't know much about the Chinese. And I was kind of surprised, and I was not sure. I was just kind of beside myself, nervous about teaching and nervous about what are these people going to think about me? Do they like me? Did they want to bomb me? I don't know. And what really shocked me, what really humbled me is that when I started teaching the Chinese, they were some of the nicest people I have ever met. I swear, I would do anything for many of these students, these parents, the people that I met. They were nicer than some of the people I knew in America. And the sad thing is nobody teaches you this. Nobody teaches you this in the circles that I was within in America. The people that went abroad, they didn't say, hey, the Chinese people are great. The government might not be that great, but the people are some really nice people. And it really changed me. So I taught English for like 3.5 years. And my idea of the people had never changed. It was always the same. That the people were just fantastic, and occasionally I'll travel somewhere and people will complain about this group of Chinese that cause these problems or that problems. But, in all honesty, I hear the same thing about Americans and Brits and Aussies when they're traveling causing problems. So, it isn't related. It isn't limited to just one group. It can be many groups causing problems. But the sad thing is, bad news travels fast, and good news does not travel fast. So, I just want to tell the people listening, no, most Americans, the majority of Americans, they don't really know any Chinese, and that's the honest truth of it all. And the ones that I've met, I've never met anybody that just doesn't like any Chinese. And that's something to consider. And when you read the news about this and that and this and that, it's really between the governments. It's not an issue between the people. It really isn't. And I've lived in Asia now for probably about 9 years. And, at some point I will go to China because I really want to experience the people and experience that life. And I know it's not going to be perfect, but it's not what I was told it would be. And, in a small sense, that kind of pissed me off, because why did they use this knowledge against people that had no clue of what to think about another group? Why did they use that against us? What was the agenda? What was the agenda to turn people against another group of people? And I'm thinking that even the teachers that taught us these things, they probably had never been to China either. They probably didn't know any Chinese people. But yet they were told, oh, you have to worry about this group of people. You have to worry about that group of people. And before I started traveling, it was no different. When I came to the Philippines, it was like, oh, yeah, you got to worry about this, losing your phone, losing this and that. And in the end, it was never as scary as I was led to believe life is. And it's gotten worse, this whole shock, media-driven, click-driven, sponsored fear that drives people to think a certain way and behave a certain way. And I'm here to testify, it's almost never scary as you are led to believe it's going to be. And that's too bad, because oftentimes we're not given the full truth. And I just tell you this, go out and experience it for yourself. Go out and find out for yourself what it's like. See if it's a lie. See if what you've been taught is the truth. And I think at the very least, you're going to end up in the middle somewhere. And in the best case scenario, you're going to be kind of pissed like me because you were led to believe these things. So that's all I got, you guys. I just wanted to kind of tie together what was happening in life with the media and the Chinese people, and my experience from the very beginning, and how I've concluded it at my age. I'm 55 now, and I've had many years to think this over and many years to find out the truth, and that's what I've got. So, all right, we'll see you next time.